I got two pieces of bad news for you this week, Joe, coming out of the box office. And when I say bad news, I mean just for bad news for movie lovers, bad news for cinephiles, bad news for people who just, hope for the best in this little sad, sorry world of ours. The first bad news is at number 4. Number 4 in the domestic U.S. box office this week is a documentary called "Am I Racist?" From the Daily Wire's Matt Walsh, and then at number 10 is the fifth installment in a franchise I know you love, God's Not Dead. The fifth installment in the God's Not Dead franchise.
I got to catch up on the first 4, though.
Oh, okay. You haven't seen any of
them? No, I haven't seen any
Okay.
of them, no.
So we're already up to 5.
Okay. I remember when the first one came out because it was...
It felt like it was
a joke, and we all yucked it up.
No, they've done 4 more since then.
All right, cool.
And this one's God's Not Dead, In God We Trust. That is coming in at number 10 in the U.S. domestic box office this week with $1.5 million. And when you throw Reagan in there at still holding strong at number 5, that is basically a third of the top 10 of the U.S. domestic box office this week was hardcore right-wing Christian propaganda.
And the Forge is still 9, Brett.
The Forge is on there. Yeah. I forgot about the Forge.
And Brett, honestly, at the end of the day, it ends with us.
It ends with us, sort of. It is sort of, yes.
So, and Deadpool and Wolverine.
We're going to go ahead and say that over half of the top 10 of the U.S. domestic box office this week was hardcore right-wing or at least right-wing leaning propaganda. Wow. Okay, so if you're asking yourself, what the hell are these movies? That's good. That's a good sign for you. That probably means that you're generally a good person who doesn't go digging around in the mud for their news. But I'll update you. So, Am I Racist is we'll call it a man on the street documentary with big sort of quotation marks around that about white guilt and the I guess that racism is an illusion or something like that by far right radical Matt Walsh of the Daily Wire, who previously made the transphobic documentary What Is a Woman. I mean, basically he's like,
I appreciate you still calling them documentaries.
I have to have a word. I just need like a noun.
No, I appreciate it.
Yeah. I mean, he's basically Michael Moore for like alt-right transphobes, I think is the way to sort of present.
He's like Borat.
Matt Walsh. He goes down the street and asks questions. He asks questions that like, have like very simple answers. I love that the answer to this movie title is just yes. You are. End of movie.
Famously.
And also questions that really either don't need to be asked or don't need to be asked by him. But that's kind of his thing right now. Is he's this man on the street, Michael Moore, for alt-right wackos. And then God's Not Dead is the fifth installment, like we said, the God's Not Dead franchise, which is has been spearheaded by this failed 90s TV actor, David A.R. White, who was in, he has credits. He was in, I think, Melrose Place, and he was in all these. He's like kind of 90s TV actor, and that didn't work out. And so he started a production company, and then has been making these God's Not Dead movies. And the plot of these movies is there is a pastor, Reverend Dave Hill, no relation to the comedian, Reverend Dave Hill, who is arguing for the reality of God in each movie against some sort of institution. So, one movie is about like universities and how they don't believe in God anymore, and he has to prove to university professors that God exists. And then he's arguing in this fifth installment, it's the political one. So he is the pastor Dave Hill is going to run for public office, and he is in a campaign against an opponent, Peter Kane, who's trying to remove religion from public life and public policy. And then Reverend Dave Hill has to fight for the relevance of God in our political life.
Sorry, wait. So is Dave Hill the guy in all the movies?
Yes.
Is it the same actor?
Same actor,
and
cool. He produces them.
Okay. Wow, so, it's really his thing.
And then also,
wait, Brett. Sorry, are these documentary-y kind of things too, or are they more
feature
narrative
films?
Okay,
Feature films, and they also star. This one also stars Dean Cain, of course. We got Isaiah Washington in there. Sadly, we have Ray Wise from Twin Peaks and other things.
That's all right.
Tim and Eric universe, but everybody needs to.
He's
survive.
an actor.
Everybody needs to eat.
And God's not dead.
And you also have the Christian contemporary group, the Newsboys, are all acting in this, and they're just credited as the Newsboys in the articles that I was reading.
The Newsboys.
So the Newsboys are in this. Okay, so look, that's all just funny and depressing, but why should we care about this regressive propaganda? And the reason is because what we just saw at the box office. We've been talking about this as an ongoing trend. I think you and I should be like nobody else is taking up the mantle. We should be the investigative journalists that kind of crack open this whole thing because
I'll watch the movie.
No one wants to talk about it.
I do.
But here's what I found out.
I don't want to. I mean, I will because of what you just said if we decide to, but. I'll watch God's
How
Not
far
Dead.
is it gonna
I'll
go?
watch The Forge, but the Matt Walsh stuff is like
No.
that's a bridge too far for me.
It's so not. It's so.
I can't even
nauseating.
joke about it.
It's
like
so nauseating.
You know, I'm sure The Forge is like scary, but like ultimately uplifting, and you can wash away all the badness. I'm sure Am I Racist is just like a hateful little watch. That man, Matt Walsh, is the smallest, angriest.
He's such a husk. He's
such a slimy little fuck. I am not interested in him.
So absent of charisma, you're kind of like, what's the draw? Even if I agreed with him on all this, like
he makes fucking Ben Shapiro look like Johnny Carson.
He really does. So Am I Racist came in at fourth this week with 4.5 million. It was the biggest documentary opening of the year, which, look, documentaries don't really open. You know, they like sort of accrue sort of over time. But I looked, and it was not only the biggest documentary that opened this year, it's the 15th biggest documentary opening of all time. And then on top of that, God's Not Dead, which is just like a horrible Christian TV movie, essentially, opened at 10th, like we saw with 1.5 million. And this is with a complete critics blackout of both of these movies. Like, these movies are not getting reviewed in major outlets. They're not getting, Am I Racist? I think it didn't. At first, it wasn't even registering on Rotten Tomatoes with a critic score because not enough critics had reviewed the movie. It finally crossed the threshold because they sort of corralled a bunch of friendly critics to review it. So I think right now it has a critic score of 90 and an audience score of 99 on Rotten Tomatoes.
I think you're right. Like, if it was all of them were in 10th and 11th place, maybe they shouldn't review these movies. But when they're consistently in 3rd and 4th place in the United States domestic box office numbers, then, you guys at the Chicago Sun Tribune and at the robertandsiskel.com, you got to go. You got to go watch the movie.
It's like, have we learned nothing from 2016? Because I think in the old days, when it was just legacy media, if you ignored something, you could literally make it go away because there was no way for it to get publicity. But now, there's nothing but ways of getting publicity on your own. You don't need legacy media to review your thing.
It already succeeded. Like, you're not like helping nothing by not talking about it. But Brett, let's like a couple things on this point,
please.
With the Matt Walsh movie. Number one, wow, 4th place. How much money was it? 4.5
million opening.
4.5 million, just for context.
For a documentary.
For a documentary.
And again, that's with big quotation marks.
Let's just talk about the power of new media in niche markets for a second. That the Daily Wire podcast network, the Daily Wire content factory, the dailywire.com, that business is very A, well run, and B, very successful. So when we put stuff on our channels to promote our stuff, we have a certain reach. When Matt Walsh, when the Daily Wire produces a movie and they use their organic channels to promote the content, they're going to millions and millions and millions of listeners. To our audience, like, you guys ever watch MSNBC and Rachel Maddow's talking, and all of a sudden she starts talking about her book, and then there's like or her podcast. They organically integrate the media. They do it on Fox News all the time. All news channels do this. They organically integrate their alternative revenue streams into the media, and at Daily Wire, they're expert at this. Like, what I'm saying is, we, the people that listen to this podcast, or you at home, might be unfamiliar with this movie project. Another guy listening to this podcast, thank you, one random right-wing guy listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. We love movies.
Thank you.
That guy might have heard the ads for Am I Racist 1,000 times. Like, it's his Speak No Evil.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he's listening to that media ecosystem.
Yep.
And the right-wing media ecosystem, just like it was on terrestrial radio with Rush Limbaugh, like, is the biggest game in town in podcasting land. And we were talking today, Brett, about how Am I a Woman is too hateful content for broad quote appeal. But this one, Am I Racist, apparently is a little less horrendously
he apparently
miserable.
made it more about like sort of liberal hypocrisy
Fine,
and
whatever.
less about his
He-
own
he
toxic
opens
opinions.
it up.
And so he was like, it is like, and again, we're being very generous here, but
Yeah,
it is
yeah.
like incrementally closer to a mainstream movie than What Is a Woman. But again, that is like very relative, you know.
So, but like because of that one little differentiation, then Joe Rogan talks about the movie, and it gets into all of those guys.
Then you clear that bar,
once
so
Joe
you can get
Rogan
on
says it,
Rogan. Yes.
then all of a sudden you're number 4 at the box office.
Exactly.
So,
And that's why we got to talk about this stuff, because A, it's not going away. All we've seen this year at the box office is the growing influence of this sort of separate right-wing evangelical cinema that is just getting is making more and more money, is getting more and more influence, and all that influence is going to do is feed back into the machine and make more of these movies. So I don't think ignoring it makes it go away at all.
Wow.
But paying attention
we
to
ignored
it
this whole entire time, and now it's here.
Paying attention to it, I think, can at the very least, sort of expose what its strategies and agendas are, because none of this is coincidental. These are not just sort of dopey, hacky little accidents that are happening.
No.
These movies are part of larger agendas that are well funded from sources that have plenty of money. And so we are just sort of getting, getting into this world. We'll report more on this as we learn more. Again, Jonah, I think it's up to you. I think we're the Woodward and Bernstein of far right evangelical cinema.
We're gonna get like 3 movies in and be like, oh, they're just so boring. It's too boring.
Well, the movies themselves are, but here's what I know already, just to kick us off, and then we will continue this as we go on, because it's just going to get more heated as we get towards the election. Because it is not a coincidence that these movies are coming out in an election year. And when I looked into the kind of marketing around them and the way they're being marketed to Christian audiences, I think the message and the agenda of particularly God's Not Dead, but also Am I Racist, is very clear. Because here are some results I found, like on Christian media, Christian websites that were marketing these movies. These are the headlines. Why Christians should go see God's Not Dead in theaters. Another headline, 3 reasons why God's Not Dead will inspire Christians to vote in this election. And I think that's the important one, because to me the theme of these movies is getting evangelical Christians who have started to tire of Trump's antics. Oh God, it's now that he's gone too far. Evangelical Christians who have started to tire of Trump's antics, still getting them to the ballot box in November seems to be the point of these documentaries. And the way they do it is by focusing on the culture war and not the candidate. And so I think that is the purpose of these movies. That is how they're being marketed. They're being marketed almost as a responsibility. If you're a good Christian, you're going to go see God's Not Dead in theaters. You're going to vote in November, right? Don't even worry about who the candidate is, right? This is fall in line kind of stuff. This is a fall in line strategy as we get closer to November, and I'm sure we're going to see more of it. And I looked a little bit, more into sort of who's making and producing and distributing these movies. And when you drill down into it, you find the common denominator is always, there's never a shortage of money if you want to do dirty, dark right-wing shit. There's no shortage of people that will pay for it because of course the culture war is a big smokescreen behind which the elites can do what they actually want to do with right-wing politics. But the other common denominator is these movies are always the backup plan for the people that make them. Meaning these are people like Ben Shapiro. These are people who wanted to make mainstream Hollywood movies and they failed, and then this became the backup plan. Because God forbid they just get out of the industry entirely. That's not an option. And so instead they go into the grift of right-wing evangelical cinema.
Andrew Breitbart, Steve Bannon, Ben Shapiro.
Exactly.
The list goes on.
And here are some others to add to that list. So the company that is handling distribution for Am I Racist is a company called SDG Releasing. SDG Releasing. You can go to their website. It's horrific, but you can go sort of get the whole story there. And SDG stands for Soli Deo Gloria, which of course translates to Glory to God Alone, in case you had any doubts about their intentions, but they hide it behind SDG Releasing, to give them a little production company shine. This is run by 2 guys, Kerry Solomon and Chuck Konzelman, not Chuck Klosterman, Chuck Konzelman. And if you look them up, the first hit I got on YouTube is a recent appearance they made on disgraced televangelist and convicted felon Jim Bakker's YouTube show. And the title of this video was Demonic Influences in Our Culture. So these guys are hardcore. This is not like, they're not like, they'll edge towards the mainstream when they need to, but these guys are hardcore out there. And they are a writing, directing, producing team that, according to their website, has had a 15-year career had a 15-year career in mainstream film and television industry, and then in 2008 they responded to a call from the Lord and dedicated themselves exclusively to faith and values-driven entertainment. Go look at their IMDb's and you'll find a slightly different story, which is they completely failed at being mainstream producers, and then had no choice but to get in on this right-wing grift in 2008. But is going very well for them. They literally have the 4th biggest movie in the country this week. Another company, the company behind the God's Not Dead franchise, is called Pinnacle Peak, and that is the one that is founded by David A.R. White, who is the star of all the God's Not Dead. So he produces it through his company Pinnacle Peak. And like I said, he was a television actor in the 90s. He had credits on Melrose Place, Coach, California Dreams, Sisters.
Okay. All right. Well, first of all, can I say one thing?
He was the best friend of Burt Reynolds' son in the CBS sitcom Evening Shade, which ran for 4 years in the early 90s.
So you said he was a failed TV actor. Sounds like he was a freaking the opposite TV actor. He was one of the great TV actors of the 90s.
He wasn't one of the stars of Melrose Place. He just had a credit on it.
Coach. Who'd he play in Coach?
I don't know, but he wasn't Craig T. Nelson. So,
it's a good career.
Look.
Minus the part after the TV.
It is.
Or maybe I haven't seen the films. Maybe they're excellent. Hey, that's one thing. You know what we haven't said?
We haven't watched the movies.
Maybe God Not Dead 5 is really flipping strong.
We're going to go watch we're going to watch these movies. We have to.
I'll watch some of these movies.
Every week I say I'm going to see the
we're
Forge.
We're running out of choices that aren't these movies. Like literally 4 to 6 of the top 10 box office this week you could claim as right-wing movies.
That's crazy. Here's what I will say.
Well,
we're definitely going to keep talking about it. We're going to keep talking about this because I think somebody's got to talk about it, and it might as well be us.
And by the way, like we mean explicitly, politically, right-wing pieces of like motivated Christian propaganda. We're not talking about like Dirty Harry. Like
no.
We all like a rough, like a hard-edged, gritty flick. We're talking about like pieces of content designed to harm.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. No, we're not talking about just the general fact that Hollywood has been in the pocket of the CIA for 50
there's
years.
So many like
we're
conservative
going to talk about
movies in Hollywood.
Intentional propaganda.
Pieces of Christian propaganda.
And look, and before if you want to, I don't know who I'm talking to now, but if I can see the comments. This gets clipped by Carson, which you should definitely do, Carson. And then we start getting called coastal elites and this and that.
Hey, you guys.
I want to tell you something. Here's my CV that gives me the authority to talk about this. I grew up Southern Baptist outside of Atlanta. I went to church 3 times a week as a kid. I speak this language, baby. I know these people. So that's why I feel personally a responsibility to talk about this.
Now, here's why I feel
and expose it for what it is.
I look down on these people, so I feel like I'm
Joe
better.
Is a coastal
I'm better than them, so I can talk down to them.
But that's why
I'm actually totally kidding.
That's where our little hardball dynamic comes in. Is Joe is the coastal elite, and I'm the Georgia hick,
right?
Who grew up with all this bullshit. Right. But I understand this world, and so I think I'm gonna with your help together, we're gonna stay on this beat. We're gonna stay on this beat.
Here's why I'm in. I didn't have to go to church 3 times a week, but I'll tell you what I did. I grew up in no small way on conservative talk radio.
That's right.
Philadelphia sports talk radio and conservative talk radio, which ran in my car and in my household too large portion of my young life. Like I grew up on Glenn Beck and Rush Limbaugh and Andrew Breitbart and Matt Drudge, and I am still addicted to right-wing media.
I can attest to that, yeah.
And for worse, not for better, but I love the characters.
We studied this.
I
So we have
I
a-
love the characters
Yeah.
in this world. I follow them. I watch their every
This
move.
is on us, dude. This is
I'll
we're
watch
the guy,
it. I'm
we're-
into it.
We
I'll
are
watch these
We are going to
movies
be the
with you.
Woodward and Bernstein of right wing
bad
evangelical hardcore propaganda cinema.
We're getting 3 movies deep, and we're
Yes.
bailing because these are going to stink.
God's
I
Not
wonder
Dead.
if there's
Next
like
week-
a-
next week we're going to rank God's Not Dead.
The Patreon explodes.
Best
Yeah,
way.
right.